talked to LSO about my computer already this morning, but we're on and everything's doing well.
We've
All right,
all
Mr.
taken
Chairman,
turns being Aaron Davidson. Are we live now?
We are live, Mr. Chairman.
Very good.
All right, Mr. Chairman, roll call for the meeting today. Senator Kolb,
Present.
Representative Ottman,
Present.
Josh Corsi,
Present.
Aaron Davidson,
Present.
Dave Glenn,
Present.
Nish Goikolea,
Present.
Ron Goldberg,
Present.
Legursky,
Present.
Cade Mastis,
Present.
James Schoon,
Present.
Co-Chairman Hicks,
Here.
Co-Chairman Washut.
Here.
We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
All right. You need to get James' name changed on the screen, and yeah, we won't have two Aaron Davidsons voting or anything today. So, Mr. Co-Chairman, why don't you introduce the meeting to the task force today?
So it's task force members. We had a great opportunity last week to get out and visit the sites and meet with the committees. Was just a good time to be out in Wyoming and see the opportunities that both proposals bring to the table. What I'd like to do today is just kind of take us back a little bit as to where we started at, what our objectives were, what we'd put out there as far as what we were looking for as a task force. And then maybe even want to talk about the scoring rubric that we utilized to narrow this down. And then what I'd like to do is kind of like we've done with both of the last two committees is we will go around as task force members after we've gone through a little bit of the RFP and also the scoring rubric, using that as kind of a guideline to discuss the pros and cons of each site and give each member an opportunity to talk about that. And then after that, what I'd like to do is see if we feel like people want to go ahead and make a decision today after that discussion. So what I would do is we'll just take a straw vote on that, Mr. Chairman, and say, if we have a majority of people that feel that they have enough information and would like to go ahead and vote today, we can do that. If there's a majority of people that would like to think about it another day or two, we can set up another meeting. And our RFP says that we wouldn't make a decision until August. It says as late as August 13th. And so we have a few days based on what we put out there if we feel like we still need a little bit of extra time to evaluate these proposals. So that's kind of the format that we'll go through. I think we'll have the two proponents give us a few comments. Then we'll walk through the RFP and the scoring rubric, and then we're going to go kind of a round robin, individual by individual after we've looked at that and say, what are your pros and cons? Have that discussion, and then we'll get to the end of that discussion. Then we'll have a discussion whether we want to try to go ahead and make a decision today or not. Any questions on that from any of the task force members? No questions? All right. So what I think we'll do now is if we have people there in the room, Josh, with the Campbell County, if they'd like to address the task force members, if we could get them up, let's do that now, and then we'll go to Park County next.
And everyone, you should have received some information from both sites in your email box this morning or yesterday. So you might want to pull those up to reference them while the Campbell County people speak to us this morning. They may reference those documents.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the committee. Jim Ford, Campbell County Commissioner. Appreciate a chance to get to visit with you again. It hasn't been very long since we got to see each other, and I appreciate the opportunity to get down here and talk about a few little issues that came up that were of interest to the committee and to our team as well after the site visits. I can say the Campbell County is continuing to move this proposition along just in the last few days since we saw you. We're refining our understanding of what the whole shooting sports industry needs and wants are. And I can say that we're as excited or more and more bullish on this proposition now than we were just a few days ago. I do want to recognize that we've got Senator Eric Barlow, Senate District 23, as well as Representative Ken Clouston, House District 32, here with us today, as well as the majority of our local team that's attending virtually back home. So I did provide, when I registered for public comment, a few documents that I wanted to discuss with the committee. Are those available?
Mr.
Josh.
Chairman, are you referring to this document that you had prepared? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So that did go out to their email earlier this morning.
Very good. Mr. Chairman, if I could, I'd like to go through those. I believe they're just 8 pages there. We don't need to spend a lot of time on those, but just to go through a few finer points there. The first page in that document set, a simple set of tables, budgetary estimates for the shooting complex as we see things shaping up in Wyoming. We don't need to go through that line by line by line, but I was pleased to see in working with our Public Works Director, a couple of other contractors that provided advisement on construction costs relative to buildings and earth moving, that when we revisited our earlier assumptions with some additional advice here, that the story I really wanted to take away is that we believe the value proposition to Campbell County in one way is displayed by saying we believe we'll have over $12 million worth of funds for construction that are very specific to assets for shooting sports. Reduction in costs associated with transportation, with roads, utilities, basic infrastructure. And so we'd just like to, again, emphasize the point that with the strong financial contributions we're able to bring to the front side of this proposition, that more of the state dollars are available to construct facilities very specific to the shooting sports, and less need for the domestic transportation and utility side of things. If no questions, Mr. Chairman, I'll move on.
Please proceed.
I got a question.
Oh. Senator Hicks.
Yeah, so Jim, on the question, when I looked at that budget breakout and you show the $10 million contribution for the land acquisition, and then I look at the map that you guys have provided with that, there's a certain amount of that land that's north of the county road or south of the county road out there that's not included in that. But that was part of the actual purchase of that property. And so my question is, and we talked about some of the stuff on site, that there's some potential even with the shooting complex to do other activities out there. How much of that $10 million will truly be going towards the shooting complex versus just the total land acquisition?
Commissioner Ford.
Even in your own proposal, you don't show utilizing all of that land.
Commissioner Ford.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Senator Hicks, thank you for the question. I'm going to turn that around a little bit, I guess, and say that's up to the folks that are on the screen I'm looking at and the other stakeholders. We've been consistent, and I'll continue to say that we'll offer up the entirety of that land position to be utilized for as much of the shooting complex as is needed to be there. And depending on how grand the vision becomes and how much it grows over time, we're willing to contribute all of that. So yeah, that's a nice big round 8-figure number that's there. That does include the entirety of the land acquisition cost plus the acquisition of the mineral rights that we were able to obtain. And I'm not going to be so bold as to say that we're going to box this project into where our limited vision says it should be. That's got to be part of the teamwork, part of the collaboration with this committee, with the designers that are ultimately hired, employed to pick the best spot and utilize it the best way. So I'm sorry if I didn't give you an answer there that was in dollar figures, but we're happy to say the entirety of the value of that property and minerals acquisition is in this committee's hands for the time being.
Mr. Co-Chairman, any follow-up?
Yeah, a follow-up. So, and I appreciate that, Jim. Obviously, there's some other issues out there that we'll get to as we discuss this. So when you guys purchased that property, and you've alluded to the fact that it included the mineral rights to that, and kudos for doing that. That makes good sense. Split estate's always a problem. I know there is some federal minerals under this, but what was the appraised value of the minerals versus the land? Because you're really not contributing at this point in time. And I know you guys have thought about using revenues from the minerals, but how much was the appraisal was minerals and how much was actual land?
Commissioner Ford?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Senator Hicks, the appraised value, I can't speak to directly. There may be somebody back in Gillette that has those numbers at hand, but I think it's less important what the appraisal was. But the split was, we paid list price, the current listed price for that property. It had been on the market for just a little over 2 years, had seen a couple of price reductions. $8.265 million for the land, the balance of the $10 million for the minerals, and that's how the price breakdown went. I don't have the appraisal on the minerals at hand, but we can get that information to you later if you feel it's important.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions relative to the budget sheet for Commissioner Ford? I'm not seeing any. Commissioner Ford, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next page is just a one-pager. I didn't feel like we did a good job communicating to you. First of all, we were having a hard time hearing each other on the stage there in Gillette that day, and I just wanted to provide a bit of information about the donation of the indoor shooting range equipment and the capital construction budget allocation that will come along with that. So this is an indoor range that had previously been built and in service at a private range in Gillette some years ago. That equipment had been donated to the county. We put that in the hands of our sheriff, and we had committed, the county commission had committed $2 million this current fiscal year to design and construct a building to rehouse that equipment and use that for law enforcement training. The sheriff has agreed, should we be successful in the award here on the State Shooting Sports Complex, to move that entirety of that idea, the equipment, the building, the budget, to the shooting sports complex. And so what this facility was 2 bays with 7 shooting lanes apiece. And forgive my ignorance on some of the terminology here, someone can chime in, but the programmable targeting devices that'll move the targets back and forth, the scoring. This is all of the HVAC and, more importantly, the ventilation and filtering system for the room air. And there are a few photos there that show that basic layout and design in some of that equipment as it was previously installed. It's in storage now, waiting for a new home.
Thank you. Any questions regarding the indoor range for Commissioner Ford? Mr. Goldberg? Seeing none on the indoor range, please continue.
Mr. Senator. Mr. Chairman, just one bit of clarification there. I know we've got a lot of numbers that we've been throwing around. We understand that equipment was around $2 million acquisition cost. Just not quite 10 years ago, we've received advice that that would be about 2.5 or 2.6 million. Now it's, that number is just a frame of reference. We do not have any formal backup, let's say, that has appraised or provided exact replacement cost on that equipment. And again, that capital construction budget to house that equipment was $2 million, and that's in our public works budget this year. So the next few pages are just a handful of maps, maybe a little busy, but this was my attempt to better understand some of the concerns that were raised by the committee at the end of the site visit up in Gillette relative to the assertion that maybe there's too much access or too close proximity to to other land ownership. That it's not so far removed from other development that maybe that's a negative overall. So what we did was just take a look at a couple of the other facilities, Cameo, Cody, also the Ben Avery site, and we just kind of looked at those relative to proximity to existing public access infrastructure, to roads, to look where there are points of access that would need to be controlled, relative to site safety and security. And in one case, with the Cameo shooting sports complex, where there was actually a public road that goes to and through the facility to public lands beyond the shooting sports complex, where there was a trailhead on BLM or Forest Service land, I believe. And so I wanted to take an opportunity. Something I said a lot when we were on the driving tour of our site was public access to the facility. And I think maybe what I should have said before was public infrastructure that makes access affordable, that gets us close to the boundaries of our property. And with private property with controlled access that is close to existing infrastructure, I think overall, on balance, the value proposition is greatly improved rather than having something that is far removed, from other facilities and infrastructure. So, yeah, that's all that was about. Any questions on those last few map pages?
Commissioner, you have a budget item in there for fencing. Was that related to this access and their nearby residents and so forth that was brought up, or is the fencing for some other aspect?
So, Mr. Chairman, the question of fencing, we did have a line item in that budget, for fencing and site access and control. Admittedly, that was more focused around those points where we would, if advised to do so, design in public access to the site. Fencing, gates, imagine it like getting into the golf course, so to speak, something where we can control access into those private lands. There are some housing, larger land holdings, or say 20 to 80 acre rural residential housing on the east boundary of the property. We did not include fencing along that entire perimeter because we sat back and looked at, many other, industrial or commercial type facilities in our area that also are very close to residential areas or rural or ag lands. And whether it be a coal mine or whether it be a power plant or someone else's private property, people don't climb fences in Wyoming, right? We don't expect to have neighbors wandering around where they don't belong because people just don't do that. With proper signage, with good education and communication with our neighbors, we feel that we've got something that is absolutely in character and in keeping not only with other, public and commercial industrial facilities around our area, but these other sites that are held up as standards or examples in the RFP. I really personally do not see that our site is out of character at all with the land holdings, the neighboring lands, the way the sites are protected and controlled. I feel confident that we're in fine shape where that's concerned. So in short, there is a little bit of fencing in the budget that would be around the primary access points, not the full perimeter.
Okay, Representative Altman, your hands up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Um, this, I just want to say first off that this has been quite an adventure, and I really appreciate everybody that's participated and the expertise by each of you. Mr. Commissioner, I have a question. I just want to kind of cut to the chase in my mind, and one of the factors that I believe is very important to this whole mission. You have expressed a couple times that a lot of the information that that your committee has provided is waiting till you get more direction, and that you're willing to do anything and everything that it takes to bring this project to fruition. What I'd like to ask is, given the RFP, and you were given the disciplines that we said that were extremely important, I see on your budget that you have a lot of money as far as dirt work and all these other things. What is the vision that you all have to creating the landscape for these disciplines? I would like to hear a little bit about that. Thank you.
Commissioner Ford.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Representative Osman, thank you. So yeah, fair point. We have many times said that, you know, we want to be a good partner. We'll readily admit that while we do have some vision, do have some expertise we can seek out, this is a state project, and we need to be willing to accept that instruction, guidance, input from all the stakeholders, and we'll continue to do that. I think we all saw during the site visit that, you know, there's a few things that may not be as applicable to the particular land parcel. I think maybe we do less of what I understand is the high train rifle shooting. Maybe we do a little less of the 3D archery initially. You know, likely more box type ranges with move and shoot type, you know, that would accommodate move and shoot type events. It seems to me that there's a movement, I think, towards more of that move and shoot type work than static range. So I think we would want to accommodate that. You know, let's say shotgun sports in general, whether that be trap, sporting clays, or the range of things that we think were very well suited for that. Again, I think that there's a niche group that is easily attracted to a site that has the right type of accommodations and facilities. So yeah, I think those generally would be the ways that our local team would want to go. You know, one of the things this last weekend, and this would kind of close my comments, happy to take additional questions, but attended the governor's match there in Casper this weekend at the Stuckenoff facility. And again, just in my personal interest to learn more, to better serve this proposition, I was very, very impressed about people going to events. And again, in my estimation, to go to the right events with the right competition, with the right organization, and less to the particular place. For goodness sakes, the Stuckenoff facility is right next to the landfill in Casper, right? And it was absolutely chock full of 200 or so shooters, you know, probably one volunteer for every 2.5 or 3 shooters, the way I saw it. And in visiting with many of those contestants, it seemed to me that the draw is the event, the draw is the people, the draw is the competition, and they weren't there for the scenery. And that made me feel better about what we'll be doing up in Gillette. Not that what we have there is wrong or bad, but it's different. But there is, I think, a model going forward that can serve that community, that shooting sports community, in a way with excellent facilities, you know, that will create that flow into that site over the years.
Mr. Co-Chairman.
So Jim, I appreciate those overlays and that map that you guys have submitted, and you know, and you know my concern with the utilities. the one that I didn't see on any of those maps is there was an oil location out there, and it had a right of way and an easement on a road, an upgraded oil field road to come all the way in from the north that was east of all of the utility lines. And again, that doesn't show up on the maps. It's a concern of mine with the amount of utilities in the location. And I'm assuming that they have an easement or a right of way all the way coming in from the north down to that location. Is that correct? Was that the access road?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Senator Hicks, so thank you for bringing that back up. I did look into that specifically after we discussed it during the tour. You are correct. There are 2 producing oil wells on the same pad there on that property currently. The current access is in fact on that road from the north. There is not an easement for that route. We understand that there is a surface use access agreement that runs in covenant with that mineral lease. We've sought out the operator there to discuss the possibility of potentially rerouting that to that access to the south. Or what we always can do, even if there is a right-of-way in that case, is you know, they don't have the right on its face to interfere with the operations of the ranch as it was, or the shooting sports complex as it might be in the future. And so we believe that's something we can manage. It is, again, not an easement. There is a right of access on a surface use agreement. I'm really confident we could renegotiate a different access from the county road to the south that would not, if the design incorporates that broad flat area for some of the long distance shooting, that we can deal with that road.
So, Mr. Co-Chair, just a quick follow-up on that. So Jim, and that would be a good idea to renegotiate that access from the south off that county road, much shorter. But what kind of buffer do you anticipate that you would need around this oil and these oil wells and that road, you know, to basically provide the safety and security for, obviously, if they've got a workover crew that's got to be in there, they're going to have a rig in there. I'm assuming there may be piped out of there, but periodically truck traffic. Any thoughts on that?
Commissioner Ford?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Hicks, again, I probably know the least about operating a shooting sports complex of anybody on this call or listening right now. But what seems simple and obvious to me in looking at many of these other facilities is that proper design, directional orientation of the shooting lanes with berms and bays avoids, again, simply and effectively avoids hazards or risks for other facilities. Again, it's pretty obvious looking at some of the overhead maps. I'll use Cameo as an example. Many of those box bays are shooting directly towards, other shooters because they're shooting front and back in those box bays, and they're able to control that extremely effectively with berms. And as far as I can see, it looks to be that there could be practical designs that would avoid the need for any types of large buffers or structures, those oil wells or in shooting lanes.
All right, thank you.
Josh, are there any folks back home in Campbell County that want to chime into this discussion? If so, feel free to let them in.
I don't see anyone on right now, but if anyone wants to raise their hand, please do so.
Okay. Representative Ottman, I left without giving you a chance for a follow-up. Were you good with the response that you got, or did you have more? You're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. For right now, I'm just interested to hear the rest of this and any other questions that other people may have, just to bring things to the forefront So we're not wondering, but that we're just meeting the criteria that we need to know about. So thank you.
Anyone else on task force with questions for Commissioner Ford?
You have a couple people with hands up, Mr. Chairman.
Director Glenn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Commissioner Ford, it's good to see you again. In looking at this budget here, one of the questions I have is just, did you do any revenue projections on that as well?
Commissioner Ford.
Mr. Chairman, Director Glenn, we did not. This is capital construction only.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, we have taken what I hope is sage advice from others that have looked more deeply into that and believe that, you know, there's probably somewhere between $850,000 and maybe 1.1 or 1.2 million dollars in operational costs, and done well. We think that carries its own weight financially year to year, and done very well is likely profitable. I had a great interaction there in Casper on Saturday. Actually stopped to speak to a young mother that had a baby in a stroller and was trailing around the shooting complex there. And while visiting with her, her husband came up and joined the conversation. And this fellow is actually one of the employees at the Cameo shooting park, and he was in Casper for our state event. And I quizzed him a lot about what's the coming thing, which should we do more of, what should we do less of, what is nobody else seeming to serve sufficiently, and where could we carve out some unique space. And you know, one of the things we heard is that the avoidance of the magazine limitations brings a whole broader range of shooting opportunities for certain classes or divisions within those types of classes, and also that that profitability is realistic. And that gave me a lot of comfort, honestly, from our local proposition with the city, with the county. We know we can do great with the initial capital investments, you know, along with the equipment, the maintenance reserve fund that we're willing to put in there, but also that, again, with the right partners, done the right way, that this can be something that is not only profitable from the local level, but generates a lot of revenue for the entirety of the state and for all of our partners.
Any further questions for Commissioner Ford? Mr. Co-Chairman.
So Jim, thank you for a little tolerance here, but one more question that I have. Within the RFP, one of the things that we had asked the proponents to put out in their tourism and marketing plan was to look at a destination type marketing program. And do you anticipate that you guys are going to have some level of dedicated marketing program associated with this facility? You know, I know you've got the construction budget. The other question was, you know, revenue side, but where are you at as far as a dedicated budget for the marketing and promotion? And where would those funds come from?
Commissioner Ford.
Yeah, so Mr. Chairman, Senator Hicks, so yeah, that question is an important one. And while I can say we know that needs to be part of the financial operational support over the top of this entire facility, we have not demonstrated to you or put it on paper, you know, where those dollars would come from or what they would be. But we do have, you know, tremendous partners locally in the Visitors Bureau. The lodging tax generates a lot of money up in Campbell County right now. Strong supporters throughout the community for that. And we see those lodging tax dollars show up on the graph, you know, when we look at our revenues after these big events like the high school rodeo finals and the big RV rallies and those sorts of things. And so I'm not in charge of that, don't have a vote on that board, but I know that the the lodging tax is a logical source for funding, those promotional needs of the shooting park. Energy Capital Economic Development is another logical place to look there. That's our private nonprofit EDC. They've got a pretty good, strong social media presence and able to touch a lot of channels through their existing means and methods that are already there. Something as simple as our Chamber of Commerce and our Downtown Visitors Bureau are also entities that have a lot of energy, a lot of participation, and do a great job marketing local events already.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Commissioner. Representative Altman.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman. I guess I did come up with another question. Looking at all this, and I'm glad to hear about the direction of the shooting sports. And we know that, extreme sports are the thing in America and across the world and things are getting more and more dramatic. Where do you see, with your proposal and with your developing of this complex, where do you see it being in 3 years or 5 years? Do you see it being pretty much established and completed? Do you see it needing a lot more work and a lot more time? What do you see in that 3 to 5 years? Actually, what do you see in a year? And so I know that could take a long time to say, but just give me an idea of what the projections are of the vision for your committee. Thank you.
Commissioner Ford.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Ottman, there's a couple of realities, I think, in this particular market sector. Becoming known, advertising, getting someone to put eyes on an ad and to engage at some initial level, that's important. It's needed before day number one, right? That has to happen immediately as we start talking about the build, the construction, the commissioning of the site, and towards the first days it'll be open. There could be a year worth of advertising leading to that grand opening. But at the same time, I understand that a lot of these larger events are scheduled sometimes easily a year in advance, sometimes more. And to break into that cycle is something that I personally think is going to take a little bit of time. Getting into that circuit or that cycle with the other premier locations means we're going to have to put on a good show with our initial events and get that word of mouth amongst those folks that follow those circuits. And so I think that may take a couple, 2 or 3 years to develop and really get in cycle with those larger project promoters or the organizers. I wonder if there may be a more immediate opportunity, and I'll say destination tourism, the destination not being a mountain or a river, but the destination being the complex in and of itself. One of the rabbit holes I found myself going down several of the last nights is just looking at, the Second Amendment culture, shooting sports, hunting, those things, how we have it in Wyoming, and a lot of us probably don't even understand or realize how ingrained that is in our state culture, contrasted to how unavailable that is in some other states. When I look at some of the gun laws, the ownership restrictions and whatnot in some of the eastern states, spread out even farther and look at some other nations, I'm really intrigued about the idea of packaging events for folks to come in and give them the full meal deal. Rent them the rifle, rent them the handgun, sell them the ammunition, give them that full experience, something that they cannot attain at home. So that may be something that we're interested in pursuing early on. Then you asked what things might look like in a year. You guys are going to be sitting in Cheyenne early next spring. That's going to have a lot to do with it. So given the tools we need to build fast, we can build fast. We control every aspect of the utilization of this land. We've got our cash sitting on the table already to get going. Again, what I see from the construction needs relative to the earthwork, none of that is intimidating to me. You know, when we build oil field locations and production facilities and operate coal mines, this is tinker toy stuff where the dirt work is concerned. The buildings and facilities, I think, again, looking at the few examples, are relatively humble and simple in the way the facilities are built for the most part. I think we can turn that stuff out relatively quickly, even in the current supply chain and contractor set of realities that we live in. I did hear in doing my straw poll down in Casper that if we would build big, nice bathrooms with running water, all the ladies would come. So we've got that in our budget. So yeah, all I can say, Representative Ottman, is that I think we can move faster with construction than some of the other things might move. I'll leave it at that.
Before I take more questions, I do want to recognize that Senator Barlow and Representative Clauston are in the room down there, and welcome them to the meeting today. I did see Senator Barlow over the weekend out at the governor's match, and just want to say welcome this morning. And Ron Goldman, your hand's up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ford, I just want to make sure I was clear. So for governance structure and key leadership, has the committee had any more further discussions since our meeting in Gillette last week? And am I correct? Is the staffing in your cost budget, is that city staffing? I get clarity on that.
Commissioner Ford.
Chairman, Mr. Goldberg, the staffing numbers, they are in this single operational cost line item. We do have a couple of the positions called out there, again, just taking advice from what we hear from others on what it costs to hire the right people and treat them right. We have talked more about governance structure. Our county commission is steadfast in saying we will take the lead relative to the structure that makes sense relative to land ownership, whether that's easements or deed restrictions or long-term leases, whether it's ownership by a joint powers board, where we would take the lead on that joint powers board. I've spoken personally to the mayor, and I know he's talked with his council members since we saw you last. The commitment is there from the city to participate in meaningful ways relative to administration, services, and potentially financially, once we know what the framework looks like. That's still a question for all of us. So that governance structure will stand pat where we left that conversation with you last week. You know, in the particular operational staff, we feel like there's a really interesting proposition to provide operations through the county staff, through our Parks and Rec division. I know we had this conversation a little bit amongst the broader group in more detail with specific individuals on the selection committee here, but we've got a big Parks and Rec department, just under 40 full-time employees. We operate several large projects or facilities, golf course, the recreation center, which I believe you guys got to go tour while you're in Gillette. You know, we will see upwards of 250 or more part-time or temporary employees within that division over the course of a year. Now, some of those are grounds maintenance staff during the summer, or they are maybe even someone refereeing a kid's soccer game a few weekends each summer. Those are all head counts that show up in that part-time number of more than 250 part-time employees. We also have a big budget there, $6 to $7 million a year total budget flow through that department. And about half of that total budget are revenues that are generated internally. Again, that's from greens fees at the golf course to the kids' t-shirts when we have 1,400 kids playing baseball in the summer. So we've got the structure there. We've got the architecture to manage the people, to manage big projects, to handle the dollars in and out. And we feel strongly about our staff and about our system there in Parks and Rec. So that's something that we're definitely willing to offer. We're intrigued with the possibilities on our end.
Mr. Goldberg, any follow-up?
No, thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Joshua, you had your hand up earlier. Did you get your question answered, or do you have something?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, Judy, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you a question. I think in a couple of different meetings, you have referenced with your experience, and certainly you seem to be very seasoned in seeing many other ranges, not just within the region, but also across the nation. You have made the reference that you can build a beautiful range with enough earth movement. I'm curious if you had an example of a landscape that is similar to what has been presented by Campbell County, where they have done just a bang-up job, no pun intended there, but of really taking a landscape and making it really a work of art and something that complements, as Commissioner Ford just indicated, the attraction of the event itself. I'm sure that you've had some time to ruminate on this landscape. Is there something, Judy, that comes across as a comparison where you've seen that type of effort done to make that landscape fit perfectly for a great event like this? It's world class.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe anybody who has been to the Ben Avery Range down in northern Arizona will find it's just Arizona terrain. There is nothing glamorous about it, but is it a great range? Yes. Is it full all the time? Yes. Do people come there to shoot and compete? Yes, they do. And perhaps, actually, you know, we've got the drop dead terrain in Cody, and we have the rolling hills and actual green stuff there in Gillette. And they're both far more attractive than Ben Avery, which is a long-time successful range. The classic range, of course, is Camp Perry, which are the largest high-powered ranges in the United States, at very least. I don't know about the world. But those ranges, you shoot straight towards Lake Erie. There is no terrain. There's nothing truly gorgeous. There's just darn good ranges with everything you need. The correct shooting plans, the backstops, places to hold multiple events at the same time. And Camp Perry will run somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 people through there in a 2-week period every year, mainly because they want to shoot at Camp Perry. Not because they went to look at the scenery, but because they wanted to shoot at Camp Perry. If you move enough dirt, you can build a range to do anything, anywhere, if you have enough land. I hope that's an adequate response, Josh.
Yeah, thank you for getting that out there, Judy.
I guess the big question, Ms. Vigursky, is do they have flush toilets?
The Talladega Range does down in Alabama, and it makes a lot of difference. At Camp Perry, there are flush toilets. Yes, there are. You know, it's ironic when you go somewhere and you're hearing the words world class or first class, and there's a line of porta potties. That just doesn't cut it. And, you know, my standard answer to people about, well, the Talladega Range is nice. I said, well, when you have a female CEO, you are going to have flush toilets.
Mr. Ford.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure if there was a question there, but I agree.
Mr. Co-Chairman, are you raising your hand? Nope. Anyone else? All right. We're coming up on 11 o'clock. This is such a critical discussion. I don't want to cut anybody short. So, Commissioner Ford, any final comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, again, just to extend thanks to your all efforts, the chairman of this committee, those that are participating, those who were selected from the agencies, the private entities that have lent their expertise. I think we're going to have a great project in Wyoming somewhere. I really hope it's in Gillette, and I know we can be good partners all the way along. So again, thanks for your consideration. I've learned a lot. I appreciate your efforts, and that's all I have.
Thank you very much.
If there is not a decision today, I would just like to say that, we're always available to talk by phone, to have a virtual meeting, even for revisiting the community or the site. If there are specific questions we can address between now and then, please do reach out. Don't hesitate a minute.
Thank you very much. I would like to offer an opportunity if either Senator Barlow or Representative Clausen would like to say anything this morning.
No comments there.
Fair enough. All right. Thank you very much. Josh, can you bring in the Park County delegation?
Sure thing, Mr. Chairman. Be just a minute.
Well, let's take about a 5-minute break. Anybody needs to get up and stretch or return a phone call or something, we'll be back in 5 minutes for Park County.
And I'm guessing this guy too.
Okay, I think most everyone's back. Mr. Klessens, welcome. Good to see you again.
Thank you, sir. It's great to see you all again. It seems like it was a lot longer than a week ago, though, that you were in Cody. Lots going on in the world today, and I'm glad that you had a safe journey through Campbell County. And again, reiterate my praise of this committee for your dedication and the work that you've done, spending all last week reading all of these documents. And then we keep even into the middle of the night throwing more stuff at you to read. And I know that you received a couple of documents from us late last night. Just reiterating a couple of points that we want to talk on just a little bit this morning. But I want to start off by just saying Park County has taken this project on as a long-term proposition. You know, we've worked for the last 14 months with a group of about 20 community residents, local government officials, private industry, private citizens, shooters, and others, along with a cadre of 34 experts that have been in our community studying what we're trying to do, advising and counseling on us, so that we could put together what we think is a world-class shooting facility for the state of Wyoming. That was the challenge that was cast before us last year when you started your whole process, and certainly when you offered out the final RFP. We focused a lot on what you've asked us to do, what you wanted to hear about, and we really focused on the fact that this is truly about economic development. How do we make this bigger than Wyoming and just serving Wyoming? This is about bringing people to our state who are willing to spend money here, because that money then gets passed on to all of the other entities in the area. So what I love about this project, and I mean, obviously we love our site. We think our site is absolute rock star awesome. I believe that many of you can see that as well. We hope that we were able to share our vision for how amazing this could become for not only Cody and Park County, but the Bighorn Basin and the rest of Wyoming. Something that we could all be proud of. We termed it as a jewel. We think it is a jewel because that site, with all of its features, the varied topography, the different buffering, the ability for us to grow and expand this without having to worry about who the neighbors would be, and we've just got so much potential there. We're daunted by the potential that we hold. We think this site represents Wyoming. It's very emblematic of what our state looks like with its rugged geology and topography. And we know from the shooters that we've had there, they love it. They can't wait to be a part of it. But what's interesting to me about this whole process is I talked about the 20-some committee members and the 34 experts. That diverse group of people has been one of the most collaborative processes I've been involved in 37 years of working in this business. We have a few people certainly that will naysayers, and there's always those in every process. But certainly we have found common ground in this community with this project. So I wanted to talk about, really two specific things. I can hammer on the site all day long. You guys have been there, you know it. You know that's such an amazing place. But I think it's important that we talk a little bit about the two things that we wrote about in our letter. And I'm going to start first with this thing called the business plan. We spent a considerable amount of time on our business plan because Wyoming is a very conservative and fiscally responsible state. The people of this state are really concerned about building things that cannot be sustained. And so we took the business plan as being one of the primary considerations in this whole project. I believe you folks said that you put 27% of your emphasis on the future of the business plan. We took that serious. And while some people may have attributed this to being in the weeds, we felt it was absolutely necessary to be able to hold our hand on our heart and say, we really believe in what we're doing here. And we can tell the residents of this community and of the state that this is going to work. This is a project that's not going to become just another ward of the government. We spent weeks and weeks and weeks going through the numbers. And I explained some of my processes when you were in Cody, building a plan that will be self-supporting and a plan that will be sustainable into the future. And I know people have questioned, could you make money on it in the first year? How long is the build out? Representative Ottman talked about, what's it going to look like in 3, 5, and 10 years? And we'd ask that question of you. What is it going to look like in other communities? Because we know what it's going to look like here. We're going to be holding no less than 12 competitive events a year, and we'll be able to start the majority of those in year one. You heard that from 3 competitive shooters that were in Cody last week with us. We believe in our first year, we can cash flow at $142,000. We represented that during our oral presentation. The gift of state funding from the state parks to help support the maintenance, facilities maintenance, that just adds to our ability to be able to cash flow. And then, as you had asked us to do, we got into a fundraising program, which we've been dipping our toe in the water and testing that to be able to raise about $6.3 million that would not only help us in the startup capital construction cost, but to create a 6-month operational reserve as we get rolling, and to create a long-term maintenance and capital equipment reserve as well. So we put all those pieces together. Our initial vetting of that through some of the high net worth folks in our community tells us that we're not too far off track. So we're really confident about that. We believe our business plan is one thing that sets us apart from anybody else in Wyoming that was working this process. And it's because we put so much priority on it. The second thing that, on the second letter that you have, talks about the lodging in Park County. And I know that question comes up all the time, and there's always that perception that, there's no rooms available and rooms are expensive in our community. And you know what? We don't deny it. We have a community that is very desirable. We have high demand filled rooms, and it changes pricing too. That's a basic capital principle in our country. But I wanted to remind you that we have the second highest inventory of rooms in the state, only behind Teton County. We have over 2,900 hotel and motel rooms. And those hotels, as reported by our Park County Travel Council using STR reporting data, tell us that 64% of those rooms are available on average from April up until October. That means there's 1,000 rooms a night available. It's not this horror story if you can't find a room in Cody. That's true. That we've got a lot of hotels that fill out. But even in our busiest month, and that's July, and that's right now, we're still at 78% occupancy. And so we still have room availability. We don't anticipate ever having a shooting event on the weekend of the 4th of July here, our busiest weekend. We don't ever anticipate having a shooting event on Rendezvous Royale week when we have our Patrons Ball, when we have our great art show. Because we're so busy doing those things, we wouldn't have time to do a shooting event. But boy, wouldn't that be an awesome thing for somebody to come shoot an event the weekend before and be able to stay over for the 4th, to be able to stay over for the Rendezvous Royale week. That would be absolutely awesome. I think any community involved in this process is going to schedule around some weekends where they have other things going on. But one of the things I think is important, that having a healthy lodging industry isn't a problem. It's an opportunity. It gives us the opportunity to build more. It builds an opportunity to put more money back to the state to promote the very thing that we're all about here in this process, economic development. When we pay 4% lodging tax in Park County, Wyoming, 2% of that returns to the state to run the Office of Travel and Tourism. And what do they do with it? They promote throughout the United States and Europe and everywhere else, come to Wyoming and enjoy the magnificent view sheds and the very, very many things that we have going on in this. So we help, by charging a little more for hotel rooms, we help actually increase the amount of people that will come to our state. We don't think that's a negative. We think that's a positive. And we don't want to play this low price game because that's not what we're about. We've been successful at it. It doesn't seem to be halting anybody from coming to our community, especially this year. That's been a real positive thing. So we want to continue increasing economic development opportunities related to the shooting complex, the recruitment of companies. You heard from our experts last week. They like what we're doing here. They love our site. They love the community. They've been here and they will come back. So we believe the future success of this whole program, everything that you're asking for from communities in relation to building this world-class shooting complex, we want to emulate what they've done at Cameo. We think Rapid City is going to be a player in the long term. That's why we've put together a plan that includes not only some extensive marketing to get us jump-started right away, but a physical plan that we can be digging dirt not very long after the governor signs the bill that says Cody's the place that we want to be. We think what differentiates Cody is our site. We have also a long history of successful hospitality in our community. We're full every year, no matter what. Even when things are bad, we're still full here. We get people to come here. We have demonstrated to you that we've got lots of connections in the industry. We can bring people with one phone call to our community to help us to figure out pretty much anything from design, promotion, to whatever you want to know about pulling off a shooting complex. And finally, we have a community that draws people naturally. People love to come here. People talk about Cody. People know Cody. And so with that, I'm going to have one of my lead committee guys, Glenn Ross. I'm going to turn the camera to him and let him just touch base with you a little, and then we would be happy to take questions from you folks.
Thank you, Mr. Ross.
Yes, co-chairs and committee, thank you again for your time. And I don't have much more to add. We've kind of probably been pretty redundant in this process, but I just want to just say that we've held up the standard of a world-class state shooting complex and the economic impact that it would bring to Wyoming. And we feel really fortunate to be in a place in the world and in Wyoming that we think in my business, location, kind of, it always mattered in the real estate business. And I think some of that is, a good part of that is true to shooting sports and to a state shooting complex. So we're really excited about our site. Couldn't imagine a better site, and also our community. It's gun friendly. Tourism is our game, taking care of customers. That's what we do daily. And I think Cody is uniquely fitted for a shooting complex that will make the state proud, and it will be of economic benefit. And I think it'll thrive here. And we're so excited to just to be in the running, to have the opportunity that you'd even be considering us at this point. And we just look forward and ask for your confidence that we would be able to care for this dream and to turn it into a world-class shooting facility that we could all be proud of, and one that would be sought after and desirable in the shooting sports industry. So I think it'd be exciting to see what will happen in 5, 10, and 15 years. And thank you for your time again.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Always good to hear from you. Anyone have questions for either Mr. Klessens or Mr. Ross? Director Glenn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and hello there, Mr. Ross. In looking at your budget and your revenue, I'm a little nervous about the 1.865 million for individual sponsors, for essentially sponsorships and naming rights. Can you tell us kind of how you figured out that information as far as the $1.865 million?
Mr. Klessens.
Thank you. You're looking at our original plan, Mr. Glenn?
Correct, page 45.
Okay, we included in your packet at the last meeting an additional, and we actually increased that.
Right.
And we increased that because we had gone out and actually done some sensing interviews with some people, and we found that that there was as much interest in that individual sponsorship as we had thought. I mentioned in our visit last week that we had talked with the folks in Fremont County that laughed at us for being underselling our naming rights. We were using $3,000 a year for naming rights, and they said, no, it should be $250,000 for a 10-year deal. So we met in the middle, and we've actually got our sponsorship at $150,000 for 10 years, $15,000 a year. Mr. Radecki from Glock indicated to us very strongly that that's very doable for an organization like him. So we're really comfortable in what we can pull off here. Anytime you write a fundraising plan, recognize that you don't shoot low, you always shoot high. And that pun was intended, Mr. Corsi. We think we can pull it off. We had a little group of Cody Firearms Museum people came together about a week ago, had a little fundraising dinner, and the response was immensely positive at the levels in which we've described in this fundraising plan. I hope that answers your question, sir.
Thank you.
Director, anything further?
Mr. Chairman, no, thank you.
Mr. Goldberg.
Mr. Chairman, I think Senator Hicks had his hand up first if he'd like to go. Okay. Thank you. Probably a question for Mr. Klessens. We kind of touched on this a little bit last week, but then kind of got sidetracked. We've talked about the site, the accommodations, the attractions. Could you talk a little more about the cluster in firearms and outdoor equipment manufacturing already in Cody, and how that ties in kind of you called this a long-term proposition, but on the business industry cluster development side of things, where are you guys at, and how does that factor into your narrative going forward in the long-term plan for this project?
Mr. Klessens.
Mr. Co-Chairman, Mr. Goldberg, thank you for that question. I'd love to talk about that. In your packet, the original application in Appendix 23 was a beautiful document. Looks like this. How's that? I could be like Ross Perot here. That was called Firearms Manufacturing in Wyoming, Outdoor Recreation Manufacturers in Wyoming. And in 2008, when Forward Cody began their march in economic development, it was a cluster that we identified as important, and that was based on this thing called the Wadley-Donovan study that said this is something that works in Wyoming. We had a handful of outdoor product manufacturers at the time, a couple of gun manufacturers at the time. But what I wanted to call your attention to is if you look at that 23, it's going to be really hard to see it, but this is the sheet I'm having you look at. It shows how many manufacturers have landed in Wyoming since the Wadley-Donovan study. 13 are identified in Cody at this time, leading the rest of the state by 5. And I can identify 3 that didn't make the list for whatever reason that exist in our community today. We continue to work with outdoor product manufacturers. We look to grow and expand the companies that are within our community and within our area. What we see happening, and you heard it a little from our experts that were here last week, they see this as a very big potential to be able to go to companies and recruit them to the state. You know, we historically have gone to the SHOT Show, our partners, the museum. 16 years of hitting the SHOT Show is Forward Cody in conjunction with the Buffalo Bill Center of the West, Cody Firearms Museum. We've also been a participant with the State Wyoming Business Council as a guest with them to help recruit first Wyoming, then our communities. We see that as just kind of our manner of acting. It's what we want to do. It's who we are. And so my take on it at this point in time, this is going to continue to grow and to flourish. And it's not just going to be for Cody. It'll be for the entirety of the state of Wyoming.
Thank you. Further question. Mr. Co-Chairman.
Yeah, Mr. Co-Chair. A question come up, and I think you guys have had some discussions. I was able to about what is it going to take to acquire a commercial lease arrangement with the state of Wyoming for those lands? And so if you could just give us a high level oversight of your latest discussions with the Office of State Lands. And then I did send out, and if the task force members, if you did not see that time frame could happen relatively quick. But if you guys could just give us an overview of your conversations with the Office of State Lands and what you think this is time frame for to get this in. If we were selected, you guys, how quick could this happen between the surface or the grazing permittee and the state?
Mr. Klessens.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman and Senator Hicks. We've had a conversation with Jason Crowder at the Office of State Lands, an extensive conversation about what it will take to put a commercial lease together. Our initial plan, of course, was to be a state recreation area. And so we have a different pathway there. So it does change when we go and do a commercial lease on state lands, but it's certainly within the time frame. By the time the legislature makes this decision and the bill is signed, we will have those pieces cut into place. We have a budget number in our business plan of about $20,000 a year for rent that would be paid to the state, and also to the leaseholder, the grazing leaseholder. Will have to compensate him for loss of grass. Our budget number is probably going to change a little bit based on some of the initial costs for commercial lease development on highly intense use sites like oil fields and things. This is a new one for the state, just like it's a new one for us. They haven't dealt with a use like this. And so what they've asked us to do is to take their initial numbers that they charge oil and gas customers, and to come back with a proposal based on the surface disturbance as to what it'll be. But that number is going to be, 20,000, probably 50 to maybe 100% higher than that, 40,000 at the most. But remember, my budget number give us the ability to cover that. So that's where we're at with it right now. Just
Mr. Co-Chairman.
Yeah, just to follow up, Glenn, and maybe you could help answer this question. Through that state process, usually there's the existing leasee permittee on that state lease negotiates that. And I believe that gentleman was on site with us. But what discussions have you had with them? Again, they'll be the lead negotiator for the state. So, but Jim, you want to take a shot at that?
Yes, this is Glenn Ross. JD Radakovich joined us on the site visit, and he has been working with us from the beginning, or we've been working with him. And he is continuing to work with us progressively and is supportive. And so I don't anticipate an issue there. And as far as with Jason Crowder, we had some long conversations with him late last week to try and understand better how the lease situation would work. And as James pointed out, our budget can easily handle it. That's not the issue. I would be more concerned with the timing. And what I found out from Jason is that he is confident and committed, and he's going to personally work on this. He gave that promise. So he's excited to see this happen. And he's going to work on this such that it could be submitted to the split board by October, and at the very latest December. But he said he's going to get it done, and he's confident he'll have it all done and committed and the exact budget number by October. And so he's pretty excited about this, because their office is about bringing in revenue to the state school trust fund, and he sees this as a unique opportunity to increase the revenue stream for the state, and that's their charter. So he's all behind it. So very supportive at that office.
Glenn, is this all going to be contingent? Because although this task force may make a recommendation to the governor and so forth, nothing's going to be final until the legislature votes, right? So if State Lands has this put together in December, the legislature will not have yet voted on that. So is it a contingent proposal? How are you guys framing that?
I would say the state would be better to answer that, but yes, I would say it would all be contingent, because until it's funded nothing's going to happen. So, yes, I believe you're correct that it would be contingent on that, but we would have our ducks in a row, months in advance. Ideally October, and I think that's doable as far as this particular question here that we're trying to address.
Mr. Co-Chairman.
Yeah, question for you. I didn't understand your question. Was your question, is the state land approval of the project contingent upon the final legislative action? Was that the question you were asking? Or the legislative action, which will meet after the SLIB board? I'm trying to figure out what we were asking, because I'm not clear, Mr. Co-Chair. If you can clarify that for me.
Certainly. So my thought was the statement was that state lands were going to have this put together in advance of the legislative session. And I wasn't clear on what having it put together included. Was it signed, sealed, delivered? Were the costs were going to be incurred to the leaseholder on that commercial lease? Would there be a signed commercial lease agreement in advance of the legislative session? I just want to make sure we were clear that nothing's done until the legislature votes, right?
Yeah, so, and because I had the conversation with the director of Office of State Lands and Mr. Crowder, the assistant director, Friday. Let me see if I can answer that based on this is a state function. So SLIB would take this up at their October or at their latest December meeting and approve it, that the lease is in good shape, it's ready to go. Now, it's still contingent from a standpoint of the legislature going ahead and allocating the money and appropriating that to the appropriate site. But we would have reassurances by the state land board prior to the legislative session that everything was in place. That's the way I understood it. And that could happen as early as October and as late as November. So we would know that for sure, that the contract was in place, the agreements were in place, and all that was done with state lands. And so we know we've got the site going into the legislature, and all of those approvals are in place. That's what is that the question? That's what I was told.
Yeah, that was my question. Yeah, I want to make sure that all of that was, still recognized, of course, that the legislature has the final say so here. Further questions for the Park County group? Nish.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So when I was looking at both of these, proposals and reviewing everything we've been through, I just want to get clarification. So what I'm hearing is that we're still pending some negotiations about the land on Park County, correct? And then from there, we will be pending infrastructure needs, which would be fencing. Let me see here. I have a list here. Fencing, water development, perimeter fencing, access roads, and water development. Can you speak to me about a little bit more about that?
I could speak about the first part of it, the fencing and the water development. The site has been used this last year for grazing, and typically the Hoodoo Ranch uses this site every 2 or 3 years, and it was just utilized for grazing. So we have opportunity and time with fencing and water, which is all in our budget, and maybe supplemented by grants. So I don't think there's a concern with the fencing and the water, because that can take time. And I'll pass to James to answer if part of your question was on the infrastructure also.
Thank you. Sorry about the rotating camera and microphone. I know that's got to be a distraction. Mr. Co-Chairman, and I'm not going to try to say your last name now. I think it's Gelacaleto, something like that. Something like that. Sorry about that. You're asking a question about the certainty of our ability to be able to put the commercial lease together under the landowner. We're in the very, very high certainty that that's going to occur. The state office of state lands seems to be very interested in helping us to make this happen. We've had no pushback from the Hoodoo Ranch whatsoever. They just want to know what the deal is. And we haven't been able to negotiate a deal because we don't know all the terms and we don't know how these commercial leases work. So we're certain that that's going to be not going to be an issue. The infrastructure pieces that are going to matter that you referred to related to water development, related to the road to the site, related to the hard infrastructure of electricity and wastewater facilities, all of them have been assessed and calculated for budget purposes. We've had a water geologist or an oil geologist who's familiar with that area give us an estimate on the water. We know that is achievable. We're not going to try to, and you guys saw the soils out there, we're not going to try to put in a typical drain field. We're going to use a package treatment plant that they use for RV parks all over the country. It's not a big deal to make that happen. We have an electrical power quote from Rocky Mountain Power. So those things, they're upfront costs to be sure. But if you want a remote site with buffers, then that's one of the costs we have to bear. And I think we were very clear that the Park County Commission has committed $750,000 to build a hard surface road into the facility from Highway 120. So I hope that's okay. Was that the question that you asked? Thank you, ma'am.
Getting ahead, Bob, there. Thank you. Any other questions? So you probably heard a little bit of discussion with the Campbell County folks earlier this morning. We talked about the conveniences of flush toilets and those sorts of things. And it seems like a unusual topic to come up with. We're talking about this, but do you envision at least some part of your complex having the convenience of flush toilets, that sort of thing?
Mr. Co-Chairman, the answer to that question is absolutely yes. I've been laughed out of rooms in this process as I've described the need for those at certain intervals within the facility. So yeah, we definitely know who the fastest growing segment in shooting sports is, and it's not guys like me. It's young women, 25 to 40. So yeah.
Further questions? Anyone? All right. Mr. Klessens and Glenn, thank you both for being with us this morning. Do you have any parting comments, any concluding comments?
I will reiterate my praise for this committee and the work that you've done. You've built a great process. You've run a really, really good program. I've enjoyed meeting and working with every single one of you. So thank you again.
I'm very biased, so anything I said would be very redundant. So I think hopefully we've said it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. You're welcome to stay online and watch the proceedings. All right. Mr. Co-Chairman. You're on mute, sir.
Mr. Co-Chair, again, a lot of people would say there's no downside to me being on mute, but a real quick question for the committee. We were scheduled to be from 10 to noon. It's now 11:45. We had talked about going through real quick through the RFP and then the scoring system. Is this still something the committee would like to do, to have a discussion? Or would you like to just start into a round robin with pros and cons?
Let me see a thumbs up if anybody just wants to jump into a round robin. I think the round robin wins.
All right, round robin. So, similar to what we've done with both of the committees on site, I think we'll just go around and take a few minutes and each one of you give your pros and cons. And then I'm sensing that the committee would like to vote today when we get through this process. A thumbs up on voting today. All right, so that's going to be the process, Mr. Co-Chair. We'll do the round robin, and then we'll ask for a vote. So, Mr. Co-Chair, back to you.
All right, thank you. So we'll do a round robin. We'll go through, and I'd like your comments to focus first and foremost on the RFP, the component component parts, the site, the accommodating services, the draw, and future success of each of these sites. And then if you have some ancillary comments, of course, you're welcome to share those as well. So we will begin. Got on my screen, I have Nish to my right, so we'll begin there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think, just to kind of go over everything, I think both proposals were really amazing and both sites were really phenomenal and very different. But the end of the day, I think looking at what both communities bring to the table, I just have a really hard time, considering that Campbell County brings so much to the table. They already have so many things in place in terms of infrastructure, funding, things like that, that I have a hard time getting past all of those items to look at a beautiful, beautiful site in Cody, which it is. It's a beautiful site, but it lacks a lot of things. The other part that's really a big deal for me is looking at this from the Wyoming interface. I think if you bring people to Campbell County, they will end up in Park County at the end of the day, just with the proximity. I'm not so sure if you bring them to Park County that they're going to go anywhere else. And that is not exactly what was the back of the driver on this complex for me. And so I think all in all, the vision that the Park County crew brings is really phenomenal, but the items in hand that Campbell County brings far outweighs that on my perspective.
Anything further? Mr. Corsi.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we're in a very unique and great position to be able to have two very good proposals, two very different proposals. But at the end of the day, when I have ruminated upon this, have spent an exhaustive amount of time, I have taken this charge of responsibility with every ounce of me to put forth truly what is best for Wyoming. And to me, I went back per Senator Hicks's request of looking at the grading rubric. Now knowing what we know, and I think it was absolutely critical that we have these site visits, not only to see those communities, to see these sites, but then to meet the people. And I can tell you the people on both sides of this from Park County and Campbell County, the cadre, as James had interest or made reference to, I think is absolutely our best resource. That truly speaks volumes. But Campbell County is, in my mind, in the scoring that I did, it scored out 171 to 163. Campbell County, looking at that exact grading rubric. I know Cody has great views, but I do think their topography of their landscape creates some serious challenges when you talk about moving and trying to facilitate the movement of, competitions or events that are 500 plus. And I think that is a real challenge. I think there'll be a tremendous amount of expense of culverts and roads and infrastructure that would have to be done. And yet I still think it would be something that Campbell County could actually complement, at least in a greater enhanced way, with the facilities of the Camplex being right there in the proximity of that. I think when you talk about, and we've heard this, I've heard it brought up several times to this point, why would you go to Gillette? I would like to think that same question was probably proposed to Dan Starks when he built the Military Vehicle Museum in Du Bois. I think you weren't always a destination place, but you can quickly become one. But I think the location of Campbell County and where it is as the heartbeat of Wyoming, I think that black to yellow travel and tourism slogan, from the Black Hills to Yellowstone National Park to Keyhole Reservoir to Bighorn National Forest. I think there are so many things that is not really a deciding factor for me. I think we can overcome that. I think it's the community, and I think it's what Campbell County is willing to put forth to make this work. That at this point, I'm confident in casting my vote today, and I would be strong in my vote for Campbell County.
Thank you. Ms. Legursky.
I can hit the unmute button here. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman. First of all, I'd like to thank you all. You've been a great group of people to work with, and this has been a fine experience. My gosh, we've done a lot. We've thought about a lot. It's been a very long weekend, having gone back through everything we've looked at, everything we've seen. The fact that Cody has the eye candy, it's already on the map, and you say, well, what's not to like about Cody? Cody is a great place to be. And then I look at that beautiful site, but I also look at how complex it's going to be to develop that site. Yeah, you can move enough dirt to put a shooting range anywhere, but there's a lot of dirt to be moved. There's a lot of people to be moved from place to place for various events there. It concerns me that the expense of site development in Park County would be so large that there would not be much left to build the clubhouse and the maintenance building, the restrooms, and other extras that come up along the way. Shifting gears and looking at Campbell County, the obvious negative there is there's no currently appropriate place for 3D archery. And that's a big deal. And I guess they can plant a lot of trees and move a lot of dirt. I don't know. Kay knows much more about that than I do, but that's a definite negative with Campbell County. And we all know that Gillette's not typically one of those want to go to places. On the other hand, the community commitment and support there was actually overwhelming. I mean, you get this sense of we can make it work. And we all know from looking at the various programs that have been running Campbell County for years in the events that they do know how to make it work. The site is convenient, and in my mind, the greatest advantage of the site is they can move some dirt and start shooting there almost immediately because you have all the corollary support facilities right next to you. You don't have to wait to build a clubhouse. You don't have to wait to build a maintenance building. You don't have to wait to bring safety people in. You've got a fire department there. You could put a couple ranges in and start shooting almost immediately while you're building the other things. So there's a definite ease of construction. It's hard to not like the offer for the 14 firing point indoor range. That definitely will bring people there. The proximity of utilities is very attractive. I'm just pretty sold on the Campbell County proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Cole.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Yeah, so I'm sorry I missed the on-site visits last week. I was embroiled in a crazy convention and had a great experience, but not an experience of witnessing these sites for myself. I'm a kind of person that looks through a situation like this and takes all the issues one by one and sorts them out. And I always thought it was going to come down to a value judgment on what, someone thought of a site, say it's the utilities or it's the support of the community. In totality, though, after I'll just cut to the chase here, that the Cody site to me was a better site. Now, why is that? Certainly wasn't because of the infrastructure, and it certainly wasn't because of so much the community like I'd seen in Campbell. But it was more the thing about a total investment for the state of Wyoming and just what are we going to, what is our goal here? Long-term benefit. And I had seen I believe the long-term benefit is in Cody. not in Campbell. I think the site is what I was looking for, and I always knew a site that had that kind of quality to it would come with a cost. It would come with a cost for infrastructure, and just that would be the biggest challenge, because the remoteness equals cost. But what are we building here? I mean, we could have built it in Casper for that matter. I just seen the Casper site being not something I wanted to get involved with because of what it was. But the Campbell site certainly has its benefits. But I'll just cut it short. I'm gonna vote for Cody for those reasons, and not because it's going to be inexpensive to build it there, but I'm looking for a long-term vision of where I'd like this to be. I'll just leave it at that, Mr. Co-Chair. Thank you for my opportunity to comment.
Thank you very much. And Representative Ottman.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman, and I hope after we're done with these initial remarks that if there's more information coming, that will have an opportunity. But what I'd like to say is what an adventure this has been. And while it has already been mentioned, I wanted to mention again about the diversity of the two proposals that we've been tasked to look at. It is absolutely amazing. With Cody, the enthusiasm and the opportunities to go into that community where there's already a lot of this type of thing is phenomenal. And they're doing a wonderful job, and I believe they will continue to do that. But what I'm concerned with is while I couldn't have asked for more of a wow when I remember that hill, I also am remembering years of going out into landscapes like that with a rain that comes down and floods a place, with soils that are just next to impossible to keep a road built, with just all kinds of different things like that. And I'm kind of wondering, I've asked the question a couple times about the wildlife aspect. Is this cleared for that wildlife aspect? I haven't had that in my mind. We did receive a couple letters from Game and Fish, and it looks to me as though that is still a concern. And so what would that look like to alleviate that concern? I'm not sure. So that is of grave concern to me. Also, with one way to get in there, that can't be. As far as the business plan, good, very good. But again, we're looking, most of these things can be, well, I'll go on to the other. With Campbell, again, it's amazing what people can do. I mean, when you go out into the mines and different things like that, you see what equipment can do to a landscape, how it can be manipulated and moved and changed and created and all those things by imagination. We know here in Wyoming that there's trees that'll grow to 20 foot in 3 years. So, I mean, there are experts that do those things once it is set up what exactly it is we want. One of the things I noticed at the Camplex, or not the Camplex, the Grand Paonia, not Paonia, Parachute facility when we went down there to Colorado. One of the things that was talked about a lot was getting community buy-in. There were some events that were coming, and they were going to the next phases of their building with a clubhouse and things to bring in things. They'd already had weddings. But one of the things that he stressed was that they couldn't seem to get hold of community involvement. They had a great line of volunteers but they hadn't done them. The Campbell County already has, we saw numerous organizations from the community there that were already involved in things that could begin that tourism and begin those things. Also, this facility would be able to bring in thousands of people at a time. The other facility, I'm just wondering, how would we get 300 or 400 people down to the sites to go to these events and all of that. I guess so. For right now, I am very prone to select the Campbell site for reasons that I do not. Let me just say, I have experienced and been open to facilities in the state of Wyoming. We dream big. We sure do. We dream big. But sometimes that is not brought in. There's not the proper groundwork done. It's a vision that we want, and it's something that we want. And by Joe, we're going to make it work. I'm not willing to subject the people of Wyoming to another project that it isn't almost 100% sure that it can be made to work. So that's where I'm standing on that for right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we go to Cade.
First, I hope they're still listening. I was super impressed with the hosting ability of both organizations. Had a great time in Cody and a great time in Gillette. They showed off their communities well, and so I want to thank them for being very, very good hosts this week. Then on to the hard part. So when I left Gillette on Wednesday, I was about as close to 50-50 as I could have got. And it took me a lot of soul searching over the weekend. An ideal scenario, the best case scenario would be to split this down the middle, split the baby, and put the traditional stuff in Gillette and the up and coming stuff in Cody, because those sites are best designed for that. Probably one of the hesitations that I had in making the decision I did is that I believe the Campbell site lends itself easily to 12-month-a-year access. I think the Cody site is going to be a little harder for 12-month-a-year access. But I go back to a couple of things. One is myself, Aaron, Judy, and Josh were tasked by the task force to select our target disciplines and to put that out as an addendum of what we thought our highest priority things were. Those were the technology range, which both places can accommodate, and I think Gillette can do it a little easier. 3D archery, high terrain rifle shooting, and sporting clays. And 2 of those 4 will not happen at Gillette. The 3D archery and the high terrain rifle are just not conducive. So Gillette's Campbell County is an easy answer. We can build another square range, just like every other shooting complex is built around the country, or we can make the hard choice and we can try and differentiate ourselves by being the front runner for what we are seeing as the up and coming shooting sports in the country. I think there's a lot of places you can go to shoot at a square range. Stuckenhoff was full this weekend. But for me, from day one, I've voted for site first and foremost. If it's all about business plan, I think Casper would have been part of this conversation too. But we denied them out of hand because their site was unsuitable. And I think Gillette's could be a fantastic shotgun facility and a decent and a good long range facility. But as far as what we were tasked with bringing. I think Cody brings more. I also like the public-private partnership that Cody's bringing in their business plan. Gillette has offered, or Campbell County has offered, more taxpayer dollars to contribute, to match with more taxpayer dollars, to bring in a few more taxpayer dollars. And they keep opening the wallet, which is definitely one of their strengths. And it's attractive and it's easy. But the buy-in on the public-private partnership in Park County, I think, gives some community investment above and beyond the taxpayer dollar. So if that wasn't clear enough, I'm leaning Cody.
Thank you very much. James.
Mr. Co-Chairman, thank you so much. I do want to voice that both of these communities were fantastic. I mean, Campbell County did a great job. Cody did a great job. I'm along with Cade. I left Gillette is about a 50-50 shot on this one. You know, I trust the other board members. I mean, I wrote down some pros and cons and I went back through the rubric. If we're looking at immediate impact on the state, I think that the draw in the site of Cody is definitely going to be at the top of that list. That their site was incredible. The questions that I still have on that are going to be the cost to acquire that, even getting people around on the site, the access. I mean, there's one road in, one road out. These are just questions that I have going forward. If we look at Cody, the Buffalo Bills Center of the West and Yellowstone National Park are going to be huge draws on that. Huge positives in my mind. I think that shooting complex with the Buffalo Bill Cody name and what people know about it and the tourism side of things, I do think that is going to be a huge draw. On the Gillette side, I mean, the accessibility was incredible. Obviously, you could get rolling on that. I think you could have 500 people in there for the big events, no problem. The people in the community obviously are ready to commit to that complex. I do have some questions on going forward, you know, what their fundings are going to look like. It sounds like there's going to be in the hopefully not near future, but it does seem like there's going to be some cuts up there. I know they're trying to get the national high school finals rodeo grounds put together. Whether that goes through or not, it obviously doesn't play in on this, but it does say a lot about where their economy is at. The site's a little bit weaker in my mind. When I put it through the rubric, what we were tasked to talk about was what the draw would be, the immediate impacts. I feel that you know, Cody in my mind has the immediate impact, but with that question mark of how much is this going to cost us? That's going to be my biggest draw on that one. Is at the end of the day, are we going to just be putting funds towards this every year? If it's, and I'm not saying it would be different in Gillette, but I'm just saying to get things moved around, it seems like the costs are going to be pretty heavy in Cody. But right now, that's kind of the camp that I'm in.
So, just so I'm clear, you're in the Cody camp at this point?
That's correct. Yep.
All right, Ron.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I echo the sentiments of everyone that excellent job by both of these committees. There's a reason they're the final two. And I can't say enough about their work. And really, when looking back on this process, it is about the people and the people on these committees. And they're hosting us last week, both of them, and the can-do attitude from both. And here we are. There's no more tomorrows. We have to pick one. You've made our job tough. And I've been kind of the 50-50, 51-49. Had a long drive Friday through yesterday for vacation and a lot of windshield time. And, and had to go back and look at that scoring rubric. And I think about 1 year ago, July 2023, our first meeting in Casper, we committed to a world-class facility. And to me, the 3D archery range is important, the higher terrain rifle shooting. Somebody mentioned about the technology. This industry is no different than other industries. The technology is developing rapidly. There's going to be new competitions, some tied to technology. And I also, and so the site to me is important, and the draw. And there's a lot of things equal between the two, but I start looking at Cody, and I think they're closer to a marketing plan. People have talked about the governance and the business plan and all that. I'd like to focus on the opportunities with Cody with that industry marketing. We had 3 professional shooters on our site visit. One that runs the NRL league. I think the high terrain rifle shooting seemed really exciting to those people. And when you talk about the industry cluster developing in Cody and the public-private partnerships, so that it was interesting that Mr. Klessens held up that map with the firearms / outdoor industry manufacturing that was created by our business recruitment expansion team at the Business Council. Probably could be updated. It's a year or so old, but you've got 10 businesses in Cody tied to firearms manufacturing, optics, ammunition, outdoor recreation equipment. Then you've got the Buffalo Bill Center of the West and the Firearms Museum and their experience at SHOT Show. And so that's a lot to leverage, I think. And so when it comes down to it, all things being equal, with 2 great committees and can-do attitudes, I have to go back to the site location and the opportunities there. And I could see private businesses using that range to test new technologies and things like that. So it's close, but I'm going to give the nod to Cody.
Thank you, Ron. Aaron?
Yeah, geez. I think about, I kind of teased a little bit on the politicians having to work this out early on. And then we get stuck in a situation where I'm a hometown kid and I've got to somehow, make a decision between, my hometown or a different community. So now I'm stuck, in a position where I'd sure like to play some politics, but maybe to start with, just a quick recap on a few notes that I saw there. As before we had gone to Gillette and evaluated the site, I mean, there looked like there was potential there. One of the things that to me was the most impressive was the infrastructure and the attached facilities that were there. And then continued to be impressed by Gillette with the, their ability to move and to do. That's very, very interesting. I got the sense that the team there is absolutely capable and very sincerely interested in their community and their future success. That comes across very, very well. I think maybe there was a couple guys that should have kept their lips buttoned a little bit better over there, but I kept hearing these things about the coal and how, Gillette needs to do some things, and you've got this, potential tax basis that's running out. And then that led me to start asking questions about, their operations budgets and, kind of where they were at. I have real concerns about Gillette looking like Grable 15 years from now. Is the tax basis potential change that's there? Can they come back from the spending that they currently have because of the budgets they have? Take the Camplex, for instance. They're underwater $6 million a year just at that thing, regardless of all the other associated items there. And while that might be a huge draw now, what if those things aren't funded adequately 10 years from now? There's some big what ifs there. So I think that the impressiveness of what's there now potentially has risk associated with it. And so I kind of have to discount a little bit back from that. As a business person, to me, running in the black is required. So the concept of being able to run in the red and, looking for funding that's outside of that's difficult. I also, as a business person, I think a lot about marketing. And so I'm just picturing, the marketing materials that would be generated to sell at these sites. And at the Gillette site, they're going to kind of do what I used to do in my small shop is I would shoot narrow and I would get a lot of action a little bit more close up. You're never going to shoot big, wide, expansive looks because Gillette is not the place in Wyoming that anybody markets. Like we don't really market Rock Springs. We don't market Gillette. We don't market the desert portions of Wyoming when we create marketing materials and we try to attract somebody to come. I feel like that aspect of that site is challenged, and it's like Kate said, it's the reason why we bounced Casper. And Casper's a heck of a lot prettier place to go to than Gillette. So that marketing piece is there, and in Gillette in general, the location in the state, like it's as northwest as Wyoming is northeast. I don't know that either one draws more people through the state. Let's go to Cody. The views might not have anything to do with the shooting, but they have everything to do with the psychology of the experience. You can go fish at a pond out in the middle of the flat desert of Wyoming and catch some fish, and you can go up to a mountain and you can fish in a pond in a mountain and catch some fish. The one that instills an impression on that person, regardless of the size of fish, is the one in the mountains. There's something about mountains that are very special, and Cody's got it and Gillette doesn't. I think that's a big piece of that. I actually think that the concerns about moving around the range in Cody are a little bit, I don't think they make sense. We're going to have to create roads at either place to get around. And the way the Cody was laid out versus the other, it's like you've got one steep spot, but other than that, it's pretty flat. It's going to be the same. I don't see that being a struggle there. I think for me, it was more about the pull and the draw. If you start breaking down into the four areas, I actually scored, if you can believe it, I scored the site the same, Gillette and Cody. Gillette crushed it on timeline and value to construct, and Cody crushed it on suitability and location value. Accommodating service, I got that one. That one was tied up. I go look at future success. I've got just a couple more points going to Cody on that one because of the, some concern there about where the community's going. What's the trend in the community and what does it look like a decade or 2 decades from now? Because that is one of the things that we're tasked for. We are tasked with not worrying about how much it's going to cost to build a road to get around. We're tasked with, having that future vision of what does this place look like, and does it create a legacy for Wyoming? Where Cody absolutely crushes Gillette is in draw. It's pulling people to come, and everybody thinks, okay, well, so you've got, you go to Gillette, you go to Cody, you're gonna have some people go there or there. It's like, I'm not sure that you can get the people to sign up and go to Gillette, because if at that place, they might as well go to, Ben Avery, or they might as well go to whatever flat, nondescript, generic shooting facility that's more close to them, right? There's no real outstanding experience that you'll achieve. There's no lasting impression that would make, other than they've got really nice shooting bays and they've moved a lot of dirt. Like that I think does not achieve the objective of wow factor. It does not create a branded, lasting legacy that says Wyoming on it. So I feel very, very strongly about the attractiveness, and part of that's from experience in my business, we looked a decade ago at moving to Utah to access labor and to have more people there, more options for accommodations, more options for all this stuff. And we had picked out a site that was potentially doable for our training. Because we'll bring 1,000 people to Cody over the course of the summer. 1,000 seats, sorry. A lot of those people are families and friends, and so you'll bring families in. But 1,000 seats at Cody that we'll sell and bring. And when we did some informal polling with our customer base, hey, what do you think about Utah? What do you think about traveling there with families to do shooting and stuff? Oh, very clearly, the message that we got was Cody is where we want to go. It's where we want to take families. It's an attractive place. It's a place that I would spend money to travel to do anyways. And so when we started looking at that, it really opened up our eyes to the fact that this location has something special about it. And that's why we chose Cody to invest in and to be a part of in our business. So again, I think it's almost a wash, even though the sites has some differences according to the way we did the scoring matrix. There's some money in Gillette that would give us some facilities that would be pretty nice to start with. But I'm going to make my decision based on the fact that you actually have to get people to come here. You have to market the facility. You have to show them the experience. And I don't believe that Gillette can pull that off. As much as everything else that they can pull off, I am in the camp for Cody because of the draw.
Thank you. Dave?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it was Cade that said during the meeting last week that both sites could do it and both proposals could not be more opposite to some degree. And I that really hit me at home. Gillette has an amazing community that supports shooting sports. The land purchase was huge. They have infrastructure. It's going to be easier to develop. They know how to make things work. Both had community involvement, and I think in different ways, they both had community involvement. I'm going to be in Cody's group. They brought out professional shooters. They put together a really good business plan. They have connections at the SHOT Show. The Buffalo Bill Firearms Museum is a bucket list for shooters. And I'm not going to reiterate what Aaron said so well, but the draw is what smoked Gillette. Gillette smoked on infrastructure. They were up 10-1 on the infrastructure piece for me. But Cody came back just really strong for me because I think as a sporting clay shooter, I'll drive to Cody to shoot sporting clays. I don't know if I would drive to Gillette to shoot sporting clays. I'm going to leave it at that. I've got pages and pages of notes. I have a spreadsheet I've spent dozens of hours on working on, but I'm just going to leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Co-Chairman. Yeah, just stay muted. That's fine.
Which one up or no? I have to say, wow, and I've all along this has been just a tremendous experience. Again, I think I learned something every time I listen to somebody talk, and it's always interesting to me to hear different perspectives and how people view things. What some person sees, the other person doesn't seem to be important. That's why we have a task force made up of a broad diversity of people. I can tell you in my 14 years in the legislature and 30 years and 30 some plus years in professional career, this has been the best group of people I've ever worked with. That being said, we got a tough decision here, and a lot's been said that I agree with. A few things that I didn't take into consideration. But I did the same thing that Josh did. I went back and said, what did we ask these communities for? Site characteristics. And so we weighted site in our scoring rubric higher than anything else. Just a few of the things, the site characteristic. The largest allocation of land should have a high degree of topographical relief, i.e. cliffs, bluffs, ridges, gullies, hills, etc. Sites that have the greatest and most diverse topographical relief will be most desirable. That's what we told those communities to go look for. Next thing, vegetation. Ideally, the site will have a diverse vegetation mix with sagebrush grasslands and forested tree covers on portions of the site. And I think it gets back, there's only one site that has all of that. It has the potential to do the flat ranges, the bays, but there's only one site that has that criteria that we put out there, was that high topographical relief and that diverse vegetation. And so we can go through the other criterias. Most of those are similar. But when you've got one that doesn't even have those site facilities, that's a 0 in my opinion. And so when you weight the other ones, in all cases being equal, the site's superior. Now, it's not lost on me. There's absolutely no doubt that the Cody site's going to be a little more expensive to develop. And I come to the conclusion is the reason the Cody site's going to be more because it has everything we ask them for. It has the topography, the gullies, the vegetation, and all that stuff. That inherently is going to drive up costs to build on that site. So I think it was implicit that the really good site is going to be a little more expensive than just going out with traditional flat bays. I do think that Cade's point, the private public thing is absolutely critical for long-term success. The thing that they pointed out, and Aaron did a fantastic job. There's a reason there's more firearms manufacturer in Cody right now than anywhere in the state, because they chose to go there. Hopefully, this enhances that and brings more of that. We already have that inertia and infrastructure. We need to enhance that. Just overall, I went back and I read the preamble. Number one thing we want to do is create economic development. And that wasn't just for at the shooting complex. And I think it was Dave and a number of people have highlighted all those stays, the marketing that Aaron talked about. People want to go to Cody. That's the draw factor. And the firearms museum. And I come back to our very first meeting in Cody, and I'm going, where else in the United States can you go into a private business and go in and shoot an authentic Gatling gun, a World War II machine gun, flintlocks? Where can you get that experience? That infrastructure's already there. They already market firearms. That experience is there. You know, if you come in to shoot and you don't go to the Cody Firearms Museum, I can't fathom that happening at one of the largest firearms museum in the world. So the draw, the site, when I looked at the things, the accommodations, I just ranked them evenly across the board. Future success, I think both of them will have success in their own capacity. And the capacity, and I think it was very well highlighted by Aaron, one's going to be successful on traditional flat square ranges. If this was all we were asking for, Gillette would succeed at that much better because of the proximity to the infrastructure. It's also competitive with a lot of other of those facilities out there. But when it gets right down to it, on the other side of that, when I go through that ranking criteria, I just come back and you can do sporting clays at both. But I telling you, shooting off a 400-foot cliff is always a lot more exciting than 4-foot drop or even off a 40-foot drop. And so to me, I'm going to cast my vote for Cody. I think it has the long-term, most secure, private, public draw potential for success. And it's a state success. And the economic benefit associated with all the secondary economic activity at Cody is really what drives me back to the original purpose of this, was economic development. So I'm in Cody's camp. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that brings us back to me for whatever my opinion's worth. And first thing I got to comment on is how much Ron Goldberg looks like he's on the witness protection team program. You got him backlit there, like the U.S. Marshals have him secreted someplace where we can't identify who he is there, but looking good in Oregon there. So when I look at this thing, boy, I saw so many possibilities across the state as we look through all of these different proposals. And I think if this task force succeeded in anything, we have opened some eyes across Wyoming that the shooting sports offer a marketable tourist recreation phenomenon. And I believe that several of the communities that, including mine, that were unsuccessful in their bid to host the Wyoming State Shooting Complex are still going to move forward with enhancing their abilities to host shooting sports at some level, where they may not offer all of the different disciplines that the Wyoming State Shooting Complex might offer under one roof. They may offer some fantastic shooting capabilities in one or two disciplines in those communities and still profit from that and still bring people to their communities to engage in the shooting sports every bit as much as we see, fishing and trails and ski areas and golf courses or, any of these other kinds of amenities that are being used to market. I think the shooting sports is now on the radar screen in a lot of communities around Wyoming. There's money to be made by developing your infrastructure to accommodate shooting sports, large and small. We had 700 kids participate in that state 4-H shooting match. 700. And so if every one of those kids brought mom or dad or brother and sister or somebody to the state shooting match for 4-H kids, think about the economic impact of that. That's pretty good. That's really good. And so for the communities that may be watching scattered, from Evanston to, across the state, I hope that your dreams and your recognition of what shooting sports could be in your community don't end with this process, that you continue to find ways to benefit from the excitement that shooting sports offers. As for these two sites, I heard it described as, a really delicious, juicy apple and a super sweet orange. Depending upon what you're looking for your fruit, you got two quality pieces of fruit offered here between Campbell County and Park County, but they're very different. And so when I looked at these two places, I was one, knowing what my community brought to the table. I emphasize that the wow factor could in fact be constructed. That I thought you could build features on your shooting complex that would make people go back home after the match going, wow, wasn't that cool? And tell their friends about it and encourage your friends to come out and shoot the next year. But I talked to some people that I know from other places around the country, and every one of them, when they talk about Wyoming, they talk about mountains. It's like they think the whole state is Yellowstone, right? But mountains are part of that iconic image of our state. So I'm going to be with the Park County site. That's where I'm going to vote. But I truly believe that wherever this facility was built, if it was built in Gillette, it would thrive in a different way than if it's built in Park County. But the archery events were, they described them to us as being some of the largest drawing shooting sports. That more people show up to shoot archery events than show up to shoot firearms events. And that many of those archery events take place on ski areas like Big Sky or Park City, where they have that kind of terrain to make those matches attractive. And we're going to have that in Park County. And I mentioned when we were in Gillette that I think that their efforts in developing a clay target environment from their little guys in school all the way up. And I just can't tell you enough about how impressed I am with that Wyoming Sportsman's Group. Holy cow. So I think Campbell County can still do some really amazing stuff on that site for shooting sports and profit from that experience. I also want to mention that all of this is contingent. You know, one of the things I thought was would make my job a whole lot easier is if we had one site that was just head and shoulders above every other proposed site. And then, you know, Representative Ottman and I could go on the floor of the House and say, hands down, got to go here. Well, because of the quality work of the group in Campbell County, we don't have that. We've got a difference of opinion within the task force. And so it's going to make the work of the legislature, Senator Kolb and Senator Hicks and Representative Ottman and I are going to have to work really hard to explain why the task force vote went the way it did, and try to hold together a majority vote on the floor to support that side. So with that, Mr. Co-Chairman, where do you want to go from here?
So you were with Cody, is that correct, Mr. Co-Chair?
Yes.
So I'm just going to go through here real quick, or we can just do a show of hands. Let's just do a show of hands. I've got, Mr. Co-Chair, right now, I've got 8 for Cody and 4 for Gillette. And so on that, what I'd ask everybody now is just put your hand up to the screen or do your little hand, either one. I want to verify that we had 4 votes for Gillette. So those for Gillette, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 4. So we've got 4 there. Those for Cody. We count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. So, and I've got the tally down here as to how folks voted. So the next step. So the next step is me and the co-chair will work with our LSO staff. We'll draft up a letter. And what I would like to do, committee, and it gets back to some of co-chair's earlier comments about selling this. And so what I would hope that we can do as a task force is support the majority decision. It doesn't mean that it doesn't recognize that your preference was one, but overall the task force's recommendation. And so what I would like to do is draft that letter up, submit it to everybody to the task force for review. And what I want to do is put a signature line on there on that letter, and we'll mention the fact that there was a split vote, but the majority of the entire task force endorses this decision. So, Mr. Chairman, that would be my preference, that we all get an opportunity to sign our name onto a recommendation to the legislature and the governor. Is there anybody that's uncomfortable with that format? Go ahead, Mr. Corsi.
Yeah, I guess before I could commit to something like that, I would need to see what that looked like. I don't know that I could give you that commitment now. But maybe if you wanted to circulate a draft, I certainly recommend that we be mindful of the process, and I am in favor of the process. If the voting shook out the way it did, then I respect that. But I think there are some unknowns. Certainly there were some wildlife concerns that I don't think were fully vetted with what Game and Fish had in opposition to the site selection in Cody. And so I guess it would really be the devil in the details, and I would need to see that before I could give you a blanket approval of signing something.
Yeah, and I anticipate that we get this draft out, everybody will have that opportunity and you don't have to sign it. But, here's the reason I want to do this, and I maybe should have gone in there first. What I would hate to see, and I've seen this happen with in my time in the legislature, and other projects, big expenditures. We're talking 40, 50 million, and even some smaller than that. If there tends not to be a strong support from either an agency or a commission, could be a state building commission, water development commission, on the fund of these type of projects, it becomes a battle on the floor. And what I don't want to do is risk losing all of the hard work that we've put in for the last year and a half as a task force on there. And that's why I would ask that anybody that feels compelled that the process was followed, that we have a recommendation. And that's why, is what I don't want to do is lose all of our good work, the entire task force, if we get out there and it starts a fight in the legislature. So with that, I see Cade, you got your hand up.
Yeah, so this was actually, I talked to you about this last week in Cody, and we were talking about how to move forward afterwards. And when I was on city council, we called this the ride for the brand message. And typically what it was that if you got outvoted or whatever, it wasn't saying that you're changing your decision at all. It's just, I 8-4 vote, but I support the process and support the committee's recommendation of the task force's recommendation of this selection. And I think as long as it's fairly simple and generic, but we can have as many names as possible on it that says, I believed in the process and might not have been my first choice, but I support the decision of the team. Sometimes that helps show a little bit of a united front in these more difficult conversations.
Yeah, and Kate, thanks for doing a better job articulating what I was trying to say. So, Mr. Corsi, would that be more palatable to you? I mean, that's what really we're asking for, is to support the process, not necessarily saying that basically, would that make it more palatable for you and anybody else on the task force?
Yeah, I would certainly, again, I just reiterate, I'd like to see what that looks like. I don't know that you can gain that commitment now without it being shown, but yeah, I think if you'd like to send that along, feedback could be provided accordingly.
Will do. Representative Altman.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman. And I've voiced my concerns a couple times, and as well, we can talk about writing for brand, and we can talk about a lot of different things. So I'll cut to the chase. Democracy is something that we're seeing a lot of, and that's majority rules. One of the things that I want to bring about again is I am not totally against the Cody proposal. It was beautiful. But the thing is I have concerns about whether or not there is bureaucracy through the BLM or through another agency where this could not proceed without litigation and problems and holdups. If I'm going to defend this on the floor, which I want to, whatever we decide, I have got to have those answers, because those questions are real and they just need to be answered. So I will support whatever this committee decides. But I want to be able to do it with authority and with know-how and with confidence. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Representative.
Mr. Co-Chair.
Go ahead, Art.
One of the things I've kind of, not a great analogy, but kind of the Miss America pageant analogy, right? That you select a Miss America, but you've got this runner-up who's waiting in the wings, and that if the conditions of service don't work out for Miss America, Miss America gets replaced by the runner-up. And I think that's, hopefully not likely, but certainly if we were to run into some major obstacle with getting that access road across that little stretch of BLM property, or a major litigation dealing with wildlife issues or something on that Park County site, I think it is within the realm of possibility. I think the co-chairman will support me on this, that we might be forced into looking at the runner-up and saying, it doesn't have everything that we want, but we're going to make a really super fine site on the runner-up.
Yeah, I would concur with that if we don't show the major progress within a time. So that brings up another point. So I fully anticipate that this task force and group is still going to shepherd this process. And so we're going to need your help getting it through the legislature. We've talked about this briefly before. It'll go into the supplemental budget. Right now, that's the right direction that we're headed. Need folks to come down and run the task force to probably go before the Appropriations Committee in both the House and the Senate, the joint appropriation. And then I want this committee to monitor that progress to address exactly what Co-Chairman Wash had said. So if we're sitting here and it's late July, early August, and there's one that just has run into a roadblock that can't be overturned, it's time to maybe for this committee to turn around and reevaluate our recommendation prior to the next legislative session. So I would agree with that, that we need that as a fallback. Hopefully we don't have that happen, but if it does, I think we need to be prepared for that. The other side of this is what I'm hoping we're able to do is meet with this committee, with Cody. Actually, this group go out on the ground, probably next spring sometime, late spring, early summer, with a number of the consultants. We still, if we have the budget or the money, we want to bring in a number of consultants to work with the Cody delegation. We want to make sure that this task force is engaged to have those questions and opportunities to work through it. I feel like everybody's credibility on the line now is we got to deliver. We've delivered a decision. Now we got to deliver the product. That's the second part. So we'll put some more money into this budget for the next 36 months or year and a half to make sure that periodically this task force gets an opportunity to participate as this thing moves forward. And if and when there was a decision that maybe the vice chairman or the vice number 2 entity would be a recommendation. So stay tuned. We'll get that letter out to you guys. I'm going to disappear I may get something done the end of the week and get it out. And I want to give you guys a week or two. We don't have to have a formal thing out till August 13th. The informal decision today, based on the vote of the task force, is to move Cody Park County proposal forward is through the task force. But we have to have that formal notification out in letter form by the 13th of August. We'll get that for your review, hopefully by the end of the week. Any questions?
Folks, I just want to say thank you. Just thank you to all of you. Thank you to the Campbell County and Park County teams. A phenomenal amount of work. And I know there's got to be some disappointment over there in the Campbell County ranks, but we're only building one state shooting complex. But so we had that tough call today. But I was really impressed by the people of Campbell County, and I hope that shooting sports are still on their horizon for that site. Because if we do go back to Plan B and they're already building some shooting components on that site, we're that much further down the road. So task force, thank you all. I know we went long today, But this was such an important decision. I wanted everyone to have plenty of time to be heard. With that, we will adjourn.
Thanks, everyone.